late July of this year, potentially being the beginning of the reckoning. We're talking about 2007, 2008 all over again. Bitcoin did pick up under a certain reality that was happening in the world. And most people would agree, like, this has been the most brutal bear market they've ever experienced. I mean, it's happening. Everyone doubts it. Everyone doubts you. The greatest use case of astrology that I've ever found is being able to understand how it impacts markets. It's like the hidden indicator. When these two planets come together, they open up this 36-year cycle. The last time Saturn and Neptune were together, the most interesting thing about that time was the launch of the World Wide Web. Jump ahead 36 years to this moment with AI and Bitcoin, you expect something to happen. And that something literally just happened right before we got on the call. Bitcoin's about to have its first nodal return. It happens every 18.6 years for everybody. But for Bitcoin, it's having its first. The main question I have is how Bitcoin's going to perform in that environment. Bitcoin starts going up 5-10%. There's going to be a big rotation.
That was Adam Sommer, astrologer, educator, and a Bitcoiner for nearly a decade. He's also the man who first taught me astrology 10 years ago. In this conversation, you'll find out why Bitcoin's 4-year cycle is just a coincidence, but there's an 18.6-year cycle that he says has never missed, and Bitcoin is about to hit its first one. I'm your host, Rob Wallace. Let's get into it. All right, Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be here, Rob. It's been a while.
It's been a while. Yes, we were just chatting backstage. We were first in communication about a decade ago. I actually came to Adam to learn about astrology. And I think Adam is a very gifted astrologer, storyteller, psychologist. And I recently found out Bitcoiner. So we're going to dive into all of this. And it was really important that I got you on the show now because we are actually in the middle of a pretty big cosmic occurrence. The minor grand trine. So in this conversation, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, astrology, CBDCs, surveillance, tech, a brighter future, hopefully for all of us. But first, I want to set the stage. What the heck is a minor grand trine? And what does it mean for people here living on Earth?
Yeah, it's a bunch of planets in alignment to one another. I think it first became like a talked about subject, at least this one, in the summer of 2026, by this French astrologer named Andre Barbeau. And he pinpointed, I think he wrote, it's either in a book of his or an essay back in the 90s, could have been the early noughts, but talking about this summer, like this transit being the birth of a new and hopeful civilization. That it would be, kind of like that great turning point for something else to change. And, like it's an interesting narrative, especially when you see it after you've been orange pilled and you kind of understand what's happening on the macro, even though it might not feel like it at the moment. And so a lot of people, there's a lot of like talk in the astrological community about like him being wrong. Because like, how could that be true? Trump's president. Everything is so expensive. AI is destroying the world. We're just diving into the singularity. But I think he was onto something. Like I have a few reasons to be optimistic about it all, and of course, Bitcoin is one of them.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. I mean, we're in the middle of this bear market and it's been kind of boring. It's been a slog to get through. We're at the same price we were back in February. We've had a lot of wins in the years leading up to this 2026, but it seems as if we are in the 4-year cycle and it is playing out perfectly. So, of course, 4-year cycles and Bitcoin play into sort of timing and astrology. Do you put any weight into the 4-year cycle, and does that line up with the stars at all?
Yeah, it's a great question. As far as the 4-year cycle debate, I know there's a lot of different ideas about it. People saying that it's just coincidence, it's not really a thing. But yet, if you just look at the history of Bitcoin, it seems to have played out, whatever the mechanism is. So there's something going on. And with this one in particular, I pretty much risked off in the summertime, like kind of just playing the assumption that it was intact. I'm glad I did that, and so it started again in October, right? So I don't think there's a strong debate, at least at the moment, with the data we have, that the 4-year cycle isn't a thing or that it's broken. You know what I mean? Like it seems to be fully happening still. And as far as it having an astrological correlation, like there's no 4-year cycle per se, but there are certain things that you could correlate to that, you know, like in fours. Like what is it? It's like 2 Mars cycles is one way of seeing it. And yeah, like there's no strong 4-year, I guess is really my point. You know, there's ways to kind of see it, maybe understand it, but like if you were to say, ooh, it's a 7-year cycle, it's an 8-year cycle, it's an 18.6-year cycle, then we have something. But 4, astrologically, it's a stretch.
Okay, well, let's get into it. Your Bitcoin journey. You were just telling me 2017,
Yeah.
you first got initiated into Bitcoin. You just
Mm-hmm.
you bought a little bit. Your first time investing, it was on Coinbase. Coinbase just kept going up. You wondered, what the heck is this thing? Number go up technology is the best marketing tool that we have here over in Bitcoin. So this is technically your third bear. So
Mm-hmm.
you're almost 10 years in Bitcoin. What have you learned, and has your conviction grown over those 10 years studying this asset?
Man. Well, I've learned a lot, for one. You know, I think being orange pilled and then the world it opens you up to as far as understanding different schools of economics. Not that I even ever cared about economics going into it, but like understanding the Austrian school, what Keynesianism is, you know, just the whole story with the Fed, with gold, you know, just economic history is actually really interesting once you start looking at it. And it's even more compelling when you see it astrologically. Okay. So like financial cycles, like going back to say W.D. Gann, who, you know, anyone that studies financial astrology is aware of him. But I also think everyone that's into financial markets should be aware of him as well. And, you know, just what he was doing and what he was up to, what he was proposing. Um, and so that's kind of what happened was I was already an astrologer. And so the more and more I learned about macro and tracking Bitcoin primarily until about 2022. 2022 is when I started to branch out a little bit into normal equities and commodities and such. Um, but yeah, I mean, education is vast. Like I could say a lot of things about it, but ultimately what it did is open the door of financial astrology, which is one that I had never opened before. And I've had this podcast since 2009. You know, like it initially was called Exploring Astrology, but in that exploration, I never talked to a financial astrologer. But lately, I've been getting to talk to a lot of them, you know, like Ray Merriman specifically and like his whole crew. They've become friends, and I've learned so much from them. If you're not familiar, you should be. Like what they're up to is really, really good stuff. So that's kind of
Yeah,
it,
and
like as a flyover. Yeah.
I've listened to some of your recent podcasts, and it's very clear that like you not only just like Bitcoin and have invested some into it, like you've studied it, right? You know the Austrian economics, you know the coming of CBDCs and stable coins, the Genius Act. Like you're on top of this stuff, man. And that was really cool to hear that our interests have converged that way. But I also heard
Mm-hmm.
you describe Bitcoin as a life raft, not only from the devaluation of the dollar, but also as a way to opt out of this growing technological surveillance grid that we are seeing be built up all around us. So talk to us about your current view of Bitcoin itself and the hope it brings for you.
Yeah, well, of course, the first point is sound money. And once you get that, then you're kind of in, like when you really understand that in contrast to what central banks do, right? Like, so as far as like how I want to store my time and my energy, I would much rather store it in something that can't be printed by a central bank or devalued in any kind of a way. And it's one of the frustrating things, in my opinion, as well, about like traditional equity markets as well. There's too many like moving parts and other factors involved to make it like just a pure play and really understand what it is that you're, taking risk in. Because even with Bitcoin or gold, like, you're still, of course, taking risk and choosing to store your time and energy there. And so I don't know. I just never found anything that really compares. And sure, the volatility can be a gut punch sometimes, but as long as you understand the cycles, as long as you understand some of the astrology as well, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, to have at least a big percentage of your portfolio exposed to Bitcoin. So yeah, like, I mean, and you're right. Like, I mean, after it was in 2022, like, because leading up into it, like, I was messing around with a lot of the altcoins, and I never got burned too bad, but like 2022 did get scary there for a second. Um, and I don't know, like, just through all of it, like by the end, by like the fall of 22, like when SBF was going to prison, like, I just completely checked out of everything other than Bitcoin. And it was simple. Like, I just didn't have the bandwidth for it, like, to keep up with all of it. And like, a lot of it had become mimetic at that point, like, went from NFTs to meme coins and all this garbage. And I just don't have the bandwidth or the time to pay attention. And so for me, Bitcoin's simple. I understand it. And so I'm going to save in it. And, I trade a little bit as well, but like, it's just the best. And like, if the de-dollarization trade, like, if this keeps happening, say the next crisis comes and the bailout is called something like, the big beautiful AI bill or something, because all these big hyperscalers have to get bailed out because of their capex spending and things look shaky in the market. They're gonna have to print, and when they print, there's no asset that responds better than Bitcoin. You know, and so anyhow, like, those are some of the ideas there.
Yeah, you got it. That's the thesis. And I think that's the journey that many people have been on. They get introduced to this space. There's a lot of shiny objects. And then once you spend some time, you realize the only thing I want to be invested in here is Bitcoin, because all of them bleed to Bitcoin in the end. And yeah, it's the amazing thing about Bitcoin is that it allows you to focus your time and energy into the things that you're passionate about, that you're talented in, and you don't need to be a part-time investor, trader, and just money manager, which the fiat system forces you to be. So that brings us to what you do focus your time and energy on, and that is astrology. So this is a Bitcoin show. I'm sure many people have very little experience being exposed to astrology. How do you break it down on a simple level to new people?
Break down astrology, or how I use it with something like Bitcoin and trading?
Let's start with how you break down astrology itself and then how you use it with Bitcoin.
Oh, sure. Look, astrology is not something that you believe in, and its PR team, in the way that it seems in the world, is absolutely terrible, especially in the West. Look, I'm allergic to 99% of astrology as well. But the thing is, it's a way of understanding time that cultures have been tapped into ever since we've been aware, as far as I can tell. And there's something to it. And that something is that what it does is it taps into the symbolic layer of consciousness. Like, Jung called it the collective unconscious. It's the archetypal landscape. It's this strange sublayer to everything that we're aware of. And we tap into it in dreams. We tap into it in altered states. We tap into it in visionary experiences. And with astrology, once you start to realize that, like, oh wow, like, actually a huge part of our experience of being human and trying to understand is purely symbolic. And so whether astrology is an egregore or however it works, like, I'm not even going to pretend to understand. That's why I don't believe in it. I just know that it works. And because of that, like, the deeper and deeper you go, and for me, I'm almost on 20 years of studying it and working with clients and doing all sorts of things with astrology. It just proves itself over and over and over again every day. Like, there's not a doubt in my mind about what it is that I do, but the real the real test, or the way of navigating all of it, is that everyone doubts it. Everyone doubts you. No one really believes in you because of what you do. And that's something that you have to kind of like live with when you choose to be a Bitcoiner, which actually happens, or choose to study astrology. And so being I do both of them, it's an interesting way to navigate people, especially in England, which is where I've been for the past 7 years.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Um, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean,
Cool.
it's just a strange ancient way of understanding time and how it functions and affects everything. And so, yeah, human psychology, which is like the preoccupation in the West of looking at it. But in India and in China, it's all about timing and finding auspicious events and doing elections. A lot of doctors use it for medical astrology. That's initially what got me interested in astrology, was the medical side of things. And then now, I mean, honestly, the greatest use case of astrology that I've ever found is being able to understand macro themes, thus how it impacts markets. Like it's like the hidden indicator. You know what I mean? Like it's the
Hmm.
hidden indicator in that it's something that gives you time, whereas no other indicator in the chart can. It can only give you the mean or whatever mathematics about time that's already occurred, like moving averages and why they're lagging, stuff like that.
I love it. I think it's a wonderful explanation. And yeah, I mean, it is a fact that as a Bitcoiner, you are doubted. And then as a Bitcoiner astrologer, you are doubted doubly so, right? And so the proof
Yeah,
has to
yeah.
be, the proof has to be in the pudding, right? And it has to have some actionable result to actually make it worthwhile and something that you devote your time to. So, I mean, I first came to you as a student of astrology because it interested me, the psychological aspect of it all. I mean, deeply on a profound level, I believe that everything is connected. And I think that the stars, the way that they move in the sky is something that has been possibly the most documented aspect of nature ever. And that ties throughout all of human history and psychology. And so now can we take that ancient wisdom and the confluence of how the stars interact with us and what we see on a daily basis because of them and use it in our daily lives for our betterment and to better understand what is going on all around us. So then when it comes to Bitcoin and astrology, how does it work? So Bitcoin has a birth chart, right? And what
Hmm.
day do you use and what's the location? How does that all work?
Yeah, so the chart that I think most of us use at this point is the January 3rd, 2009 chart for 6:15 p.m. in London. The reason for London is there's a lot of belief, and I don't even know, if it can be ever confirmed that Satoshi was English, just in the way that a lot of his early threads were and how he wrote, and like in the early blocks and whatnot. Like it seemed to be British English over American English or any other, which is interesting. And there's other points too. But regardless of the point, like we know that the first block was mine. That's what the chart's for on January 3rd, 2009. And so the location does matter because it will change the ascendant. But there's something about this chart to where, having been doing this long enough, like once I spend a little time with the chart and I track it for a bit, like if it proves itself to be alive and correlated with things that are happening in the sky, I'm pretty simple. Like I'll keep it around and keep studying it. And so it's the one chart I've been looking at for Bitcoin since 2017, and it's quite lit up at the moment as well. And so there's really like a two-step process when you're doing any analysis in financial astrology, and I would have to say the first one is just like a profound understanding of the macro with the configuration of the sky, where all the outer planets, what's going on with Jupiter and Saturn, where are we at in the Venus and Mercury cycle, our eclipse is close, all that kind of stuff. And if you can translate that well enough in relation to the macro, that's step one, because you already have like the hidden indicator, which is time. Like for example, like I taught a whole series on financial astrology last year, and I was like a broken record throughout the classes talking about late July of this year, of potentially being the beginning of the reckoning. We're talking about 2007, 2008 all over again. Just because of a convergence of a few astrological cycles. And as we got closer and closer to here, I started to doubt myself around that. I was like, ooh, yeah, maybe not now. Maybe like end of year, maybe like post midterms, maybe early Q1 2027. But now that we're here, I mean, it's happening. Whether it's going to be, quite the follow through, like, another 30 to 50% correction in the S&P kind of a thing. We'll see. Like, is this like the first step to it? I don't know, but like here we are in late July, and people are scared.
How many apps does it take to manage your Bitcoin? One to buy, one to send, one for Lightning, and another for loans. That's a lot of friction. Well, now there's Rhino. Listen to the end, and I'll tell you how they'll set you up with $10 of free Bitcoin. Rhino is a next generation Bitcoin app that makes living on Bitcoin easy. At Rhino, you can buy Bitcoin with zero fees. Get a Bitcoin backed loan right in the app. Move cash globally over Bitcoin rails fast and easy. Automate your stacking with a DCA plan, so your stack is growing, whether the market is up, down, or you're touching grass. And it doesn't stop there. Bill pay, debit and credit cards, as well as retirement accounts are all coming soon. At Rhino, your Bitcoin is never rehypothecated. Security comes first, with biometric verification, 24/7 fraud protection, and the ability to move your Bitcoin to self-custody whenever you're ready. Click the link below in the description and download Rhino for iOS or Android. Use code Bitcoin News and Rhino will drop you $10 of free Bitcoin right into your wallet to start you on your stacking journey. Get the most Bitcoin for your dollar with Rhino. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's just paint the picture of where we're at right now in terms of markets. The Korean stock index has fallen 40% just in the last 8 weeks or so. SOX, the semiconductor ETF, is down roughly 30% in that same time period. It does seem as if the AI trade is beginning to unwind. And many people say Bitcoin is the canary in the coal mine, that it smells these things out first. And it's taken a brutal dive since February and has stayed pretty strong since then in that 60K range. But maybe Bitcoin was telling the story just 6 months early. So what is going on in the sky right now that would bring about such an event like the next great financial crisis?
Yeah, well, the first thing is I think Bitcoin is that. Like, it's the only 24/7 free market, the only free market left. And so when it was selling off, and just the energy of it, if you were paying attention or trying to trade it at all, of just what was happening with like semis and memory and everything like that throughout the spring, like it was so insane. And like I just didn't trust it because in a way, Bitcoin's my truth gauge. And with Bitcoin doing what it was doing, I was like, it's just like any day now, any day now, any day now. And it just kept fucking going. And I'm like, all right, I still have a lot to learn, always got more to learn, but like it just didn't make any sense. It was very interesting to me. And so I think Bitcoin did pick up on a certain reality that was happening in the world. Whether you want to say that was how inflationary, the Strait of Hormuz was in the beginning of this conflict, which by the way correlated to something astrologically, which was the Saturn Neptune conjunction. Happens every 36 years. Pretty big deal. And it was like within days of that conjunction that we've been talking about for years. And then that's when Midnight Hammer came down. So in this moment, like a lot of that astrology is still alive, right? Like Saturn and Neptune are still close to one another in early Aries, which for Bitcoin is its moon. So the moon represents the plebs in the context of the Bitcoin chart. It's you and I. It's all hodlers. The moon is us. And most people would agree, like this has been the most brutal bear market they've ever experienced. Personally, I mean, I know the points that are being made. I can see the metrics, like I get it, but I don't know. I'm just too used to it by now. Like you said, it's my third one, and so like I was prepared for it. I expected it. Here we are. Now we're at like a certain level. Like I'm just tripling my DCAs at this point. If we go lower, awesome. And so it's not like the fear I had in 2018 when I didn't know anything, and I put all the money, which was not a lot, into Bitcoin and shitcoins, and then everything went down 80%. That messed me up. Like that was like, oh God, you're such an idiot, kind of a thing. Because back then, like, there was no guarantee that any of it would survive, right, Raft? Like, we had no guarantees, and I suppose that's still true, but especially back then, it's like at any moment, it's like the government could have banned this. Is it even legal for me to hold this? Those fundamental questions were on our minds back then, and now it's, I think, slightly different. So, yeah. And so in this moment, there's like just all these outer planets that are aligned. So people talking about the minor grand trine or the Barbeau basket. Like, I don't want to just fire it all off and confuse people, but it relates to all the outer planets. That's Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter, and then some, like the full moon tonight. Like the full moon is involved. It's right on Jupiter and Pluto. And so it's interesting. And so, when you have a lunation light up an aspect that's happening like that on a collective level, you expect something to happen. And that something literally just happened right before we got on the call. The FOMC.
Yes.
And like futures ripped, and then they absolutely shit the bed. And so it's like, what's going on? Like, what's happening here? Is this, again, the beginning of it? I don't know, but like, we're there. And especially because of the most reliable cycle that I think we can kind of actively use in our investing journey, which is the real estate cycle correlated to the nodes of the moon. And so you'll hear this guy, Phil Anderson, talk about this because he wrote a book about it. But W.D. Gann, I think, is the first to like really speak to this and how land values control everything. It's not M2, it's not interest rates, it's not anything. It's just, land values and credit health. And it has this 18.6 year cycle. And he never reveals, I've listened to so many of his interviews, he never, ever reveals what the hell he's talking about. But as an astrologer, it's like, even if he said 18.5, I'd be like, maybe it's just a coincidence. But when you say 18.6, it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about, guy. Like, you're talking about the nodes of the moon. You're talking about the eclipse cycle. Like, that's 18.6 years. And that's what Gann was speaking about, too. And so with that, we are at the very tippy top of that 18-point year cycle. And so it's any time now, between now and, well, we'll see. But like, we're there. And if you look back at it, historically, like, it's deadly accurate. And for the last two, so the one that was in 07, and then going back to late 80s, early 90s, the nodes were also in Leo Aquarius, and they literally just moved into Leo Aquarius again, which of course is where Bitcoin's nodes are, because Bitcoin was created during the GFC. And so Bitcoin's about to have its first nodal return. Happens every 18.6 years for everybody. But for Bitcoin, it's having its first nodal return. So it's a lot, you asked, but like, when you start to correlate all that kind of stuff and you know what it means, right? And you're like, oh, like, all this stuff is kind of completing, it's all coming to a head. The main question I have is how Bitcoin's going to perform in that environment, right? Because it was created in it for a very specific reason last time. And because it's so sensitive to liquidity, is it actually going to perform? Or is it going to get taken down with everything else? At the moment, the signs are good, man. Like, with this sell-off in tech and everything related to AI, the fact that like Bitcoin's actually just sideways and up is hopeful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, we've been waiting for the decoupling, right? For Bitcoin to be the true risk-off trade that we say it is for all this time. Peter Schiff always says, but it just NASDAQ correlated, right? It just goes along with the NASDAQ. If the NASDAQ goes down, then Bitcoin's going to go down. Well, I mean, I think eventually at some point in its history, it's going to fulfill that role. And maybe it is if we do enter into a new financial crisis, maybe this is that time. It definitely is mature enough, adopted enough on different levels, whether it be us retail investors or the highest levels of finance and even the government, right, with the strategic Bitcoin reserve. So it has found its way in its short 17-year existence up to the highest levels of power, and the biggest names in finance at least know of it, talk about it, even if they don't truly believe it just yet. But maybe this is the test where Bitcoin fully matures, as an 18-year-old does in our society. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's totally possible. I mean, like it's so the main reasons why I'm bullish right now, and that when I say right now, I mean I kind of mean within the next quarter or two as like a bottom being formed, but also like what the future looks like, even in relation to this whole real estate cycle thing. And it goes very much against what this guy Phil Anderson talks about. Like he thinks that Bitcoin is literally the symptom of risk getting out of control. Like he's not a Bitcoiner. He thinks that Bitcoin and crypto, and I would agree with the rest of the crypto space, but like not with Bitcoin, but he thinks that it's like actually the example of this cycle, like subprime mortgages were of the last, that's going to blow this whole thing up. And sometimes I wonder, with all these preferreds happening with these Bitcoin treasury companies and like the moves that Saylor's doing, look, maybe this is controversial and I'm going to lose a lot of fans here, but I've never been a big Saylor guy. Like I read people for a living. I'm pretty sensitive and I just don't trust him. Like I've never trusted him, and like that, like hot take, I guess. But like, I just never trusted the guy. So like, I don't own MicroStrategy. Bitcoin's an open source decentralized protocol. And so like, it's money for your enemies and such. He's not exactly my enemy, but everyone should be able to save their energy and time in Bitcoin. But for someone to, have nearly 1 million Bitcoin out of the 21 million, and then to be doing what he's doing with these preferreds in the way that, and also like the whole drama with Jack Mallers. I don't know if you guys covered that in the show or you talked about it, but like I've always had a lot of respect for Jack. And like with some of that drama that just came up around it, it was kind of, I don't know. It's the ultimate bull signal, or bear signal for Bitcoin is just Saylor and these strategies kind of unwinding in a very, very dramatic way. And I'm not calling them Ponzi's. It's financial engineering that I, can only understand a little bit. But like, the fact that he's selling now and he's selling his own stock to then buy Stretch and do like this, all of it, like I don't like any of it. It like completely goes against why I think a lot of Bitcoiners are here. And what has distracted me, and my final point actually is a lot of these like opinions come from personal experience where like I witnessed, for instance, so many of my friends and people that I've orange pilled over the years and, like have their Bitcoin in cold storage and, are very happy about getting involved with the Bitcoin. But a lot of them have become like overly interested in SATA, in Stretch, in getting this like 11, 12%, right? And like, it's a bit worrisome to me because like I get it. Like it's nice to get a good yield, but like, is that why you buy Bitcoin? Like Bitcoin's not giving you yield. So what's the reason why you buy Bitcoin? Like, why are you being pulled in that direction? Because like when Bitcoin moves, we all know it'll move that 11% in one day once it starts moving, And so if like all your capital is tied up in SATA or Stretch, like that's just like selling calls against your entire Bitcoin position. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
Like, yeah, it's weird.
It started off so simple, right? Just turn the company balance sheet into Bitcoin, save in the hardest money, and save the melting ice cube of fiat that they had in the bank. And now it's become a very complex sort of Goldberg machine, right? Where he's got all these different products and they're sort of competing against each other, whether it's the MSTR common versus STRC, the Bitcoin price itself. And so, yeah, it has gotten to a point where it's pretty obvious that they only really care about STRC. As somebody who bought MSTR when it was around like $350, I mean, I've just been getting diluted on for the last like year and a half, and it's hard to see that. And so, yeah, I definitely think that Saylor's personality, his sort of cachet within the Bitcoin community has, I think, taken a hit over the last year. There's no doubt about that, especially as the focus has gone from Bitcoin is the best money to it is just digital capital and you to build all these things on top of it. But I'm curious, have you ever looked at Saylor's chart and what does
Oh
it
yeah,
say if you have? What does this chart look like?
I'll have to pull it up, but there's interesting synastry between him and Bitcoin.
Mm,
That's for sure. Yeah, it's been a while since I have looked at it, but I got it right here. Give me a second.
nice.
Yeah, he's a very Aquarian guy, as you would imagine. And why I would make that assumption is just because, he's like an MIT Air Force guy, very tech oriented, right?
Yes.
And
And
but there's interesting synergy to say that between just the Bitcoin chart and the person. And it's an interesting
mhm.
that you can do. You can put your chart on the outside of the Bitcoin chart and just look at the synastry. And what is synastry? It's the relationship between two things. Usually it's cast between two people for relationship charts, but you can do it between you and a company, you and an asset, you and a event, you and a lot of things. And so, yeah, they got a relationship, Saylor and Bitcoin, clearly.
Understandable, yes. And it's interesting to me that you're a big Jack Mallers fan. And there was some big news in the last week or two that he stepped down from his role
Yeah.
at 21, which is a Tether owned company. I would love to get your
Yeah.
take on Tether, stablecoins, Jack being a part of it and stepping down. And where do you see this whole saga going?
Yeah, that was my worst trade of the year. I was like doing the wheel strategy with options on 21 only because like I just kind of trust in Jack and I thought that the idea of like merging Strike with 21 and like I think they have like 43,000 Bitcoin like second to strategy. And so I'm like, like they do that. They're also acquiring like a Bitcoin miner and they're just going to create this huge Bitcoin business. I was kind of behind it. And the moment Jack stepped down, I just put a tight stop in and got stopped out of my whole position. It's messed up. What do I think? That was literally the only Bitcoin treasury company I owned. And I only did it because I kind of thought, why not? I'll play with it. And got burned. And so I just buy Bitcoin.
Yes, I think that's what
Yeah.
we learned over time just by Bitcoin. But
Yeah.
do you think Jack stepped down for the right reasons? Do you think he was forced out? And I mean, he did
Yeah.
say he wanted to be CEO for life. There are quotes of him saying that. So, I mean, what's your take on him after all this?
Yeah, man. Like I don't really know tons of the details about the drama. I heard his take on it. Um, and so I'll just respond to that, which is like with Strike, he has full control. He runs the company, has a couple hundred employees. They're constantly shipping. Um, Strike is like the best peer to peer way, to like exchange value quickly with people, but also like to orange bill people as well. It's the easiest thing to get them just to buy a couple sats because there's no fees on DCAs either. And so just to like get people to understand it, set up Strike, put a $10 DCA in there and just forget about it. Just make sure the account's topped up. But a lot of the other stuff too, like a lot of people hate on like the line of credit and Bitcoin lending and all these different things. I don't know. I think it's the necessary steps for, like a Bitcoin standard to occur. Like I don't necessarily hate it. And as far as him stepping down, I think what he said in the video is that, with Strike, again, he's the CEO, he has full control, creative, liberties and all of it. With 21, there's a board, and he didn't have the same type of control. And so like whatever falling out occurred there between him and the board, or him realizing that like, ooh, if we merge Strike with 21, I'm going to lose my baby. I'm going to lose my power here to be able to do exactly what I want to do with this company that I've built. Right. And so if that's true, I mean, it's his story. And, you know, like, I don't know him personally, but like when it comes to like Bitcoin influencers or personalities within our community, um, my read on him is I trust him more than I trust Saylor. And I don't know the tether guys either. But like when it comes to like, you know, trusting people you don't know and what they're up to, that's just my take, you know? And so I wouldn't say I'm like ride or die with Jack, but like I support him. I think he's done a lot of good for Bitcoin. And if that's the real story, then I understand it. You know, like if I had have built, you know, because I have built a business, like I have a podcast and I have a whole little world that I've built around astrology. If there was like a bigger company that wanted to acquire me and pull me in, but then like every time I wrote or did a podcast or did anything, I would have like human or you know HR or whatever like screening everything I fucking did. Like I like no. Like no, like if there was anything getting in the way from what I had always done with the thing that I created, I would also eject from that merge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, that's the case. If it's not, if there's more drama, you can fill me in. My mind could be changed. I'm very flexible. That's all I know. That's all I
Yeah,
got.
no, I think that's a solid take. He definitely didn't want to give up his baby, which is Strike, and so he made a clean exit. And I think that's the best thing he could have done at this juncture, because it was a whole entire year of plans are coming, and nothing really materialized. So let Tether have their foothold in America with this company, and then Jack can continue on with his project. And I think that probably Bitcoin will be better off in the end for this outcome. But I want to get back into.
Do you think maybe? Here's a question for you, though, real quick around it,
Yeah.
because I don't know if this is part of the news, but my first assumption when it happened was that the board, you know, or like whatever was going at 21, were actually proposing to do something like SETA or Stretch, right?
Yeah,
That they were like, oh, yeah, actually, we're going to do this. And then because he's been so vocal, Jack's been so vocal about understanding it, which honestly, I'm going to completely relate to that. Like I've spent countless hours, Rob, really trying to understand all these different preferreds. Like I've been spending time since the beginning, since Saylor first launched them, like all of them, all 5 of them. Like what's the difference? Like is any of this interesting to me, you know? And when Stretch came out initially, I was like, well, that is interesting to get paid out monthly 11% or whatever it was. And so I would like play around with it a little bit, but like I never had a good feeling about it, right? And so it just hasn't been a thing. But like that was like one of my intuitions was like, what if they floated that idea? And he's like, fuck this, I'm out. Like we're not doing that, you know? Because it's been the drama, it's been the critique of his as of late.
Mm-hmm. No, he definitely did go head to head with Saylor over in Prague. We've had a couple of clips from that conference go viral over on the Bitcoin news channel of him challenging him, like, where does the yield come from, right? And so it's that could play a part of it, but I also think it's really about Tether just wanting complete control of this thing, right? They own the board. They bought out SoftBank. SoftBank's gone, so they control like 90+% of the company. They brought on this guy, Raphael Zagari, who ran their mining operation to sort of co-lead with Jack, and now Jack's gone and this guy's the CEO. So I think they were just slowly but surely making sure that they had more and more control over this entity. And at the end of the day, Jack just didn't want to give up Strike, which was the right decision. So
fair. So you're on board too with my read on it.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of backroom stuff, I think, going on that we'll probably never know. But the Raphael Zagari story, him as new CEO, I mean, he was sued by Swan. Swan accused him of stealing company secrets when they worked on this mining joint venture together. And then he took the mining company over to Tether, who was working with Swan on this thing. So there was a whole bunch of stuff going on. And yeah, it's a lot of corporate intrigue, palace intrigue behind the scenes. And yeah. But I wanted to talk about this time that we're in because it is so monumental and pivotal. And I think one really cool thing about astrology is that you can compare it to history, right? When we've seen these conjunctions before, these cycles play out before. So take us back in time. I know that you related what we're going through right now to 1989 and the founding of the World Wide Web, and also the late 1800s, correct? And can we go even further back? And how do these all tie together?
Yeah, it depends on the cycle you're tracking. But I mentioned the nodes, the 18.6 thing, the land cycle, right? And so that just repeats every 18.6 years. So that, you just go back in time and, it brings you to the late 80s, early 90s. And that overlaps with the last time Saturn and Neptune came together. Now, why it matters, for anyone listening that don't know anything about astrology, it's like Saturn is the status quo. It is what Bitcoin is disrupting, right? Like it's fiat, it's the way the world is structured, it's tax law, it's everything we have to deal with. And so Saturn is just what is at any current moment when you're thinking about it in a mundane sense, right? Neptune is the dream of what could be. When these two planets come together, they open up this 36-year cycle where there's a dream that starts to kind of like sweep across the collective mind. And it's usually exalted via visionaries or art or whatever it has to be. But slowly you could just say the zeitgeist or the world dream changes. But oftentimes, like very abruptly, like in the last time Saturn and Neptune were together, the correlation most astrologers point to is the fall of the Soviet Union and the wall, which of course is important. But to me, the most interesting thing about that time was the launch of the World Wide Web in ICP, TCP. Like the fact that like you have that in the late 80s, right around the conjunction, and then you just jump ahead 36 years to this moment with AI and Bitcoin. It's very hard to see. Like no one could really see it in the late 80s, early 90s of like where this would take us. But 36 years later, here we are. Right. And so, the status quo is changed by all of us human beings pulling in dreams and vision and implementing it with our time and energy. It takes time, steady, but once it gets to a tipping point and there's enough effort and enough good ideas to kind of infect enough people, it's positive. And of course, it's the shadow too, like mass formation psychosis and, people like, touching on the CBDC things like surveillance and the digital state and all that kind of stuff is probably where you could talk about the dark side of Saturn and Neptune. But it's just a huge cycle that seems to kind of reshape the world. And it's not always like a tech innovation that changes the world. I mean, that's not exactly what made the Soviet Union fall, right? It's more complicated than that. But we're in it, like it literally just occurred on February 20th, again, within days of the Iranian conflict beginning. And so, you can see things like that. And also, just to give an idea, like when Saturn meets up with outer planets, it's a really big deal. All right. So, when was the last time Saturn met up with an outer planet? Well, it was in early 2020 when it met up with Pluto. And I mean, for years, like I think I even did a podcast 10 years before that happened, like in 2010, about it, because it was just, it's one of the big cycles. It's one of the things you want to understand when you're first learning astrology. And so I had done a podcast in the early days about it and had always like referenced it, talked about it. And then when it finally came, like, look, I never specifically called a pandemic that would start in China, but that's how it happened. And it's a deep meditation on the dynamic between Saturn and Pluto. because where Pluto is different than Neptune is Pluto has everything to do with power. Like, where does true power lie when we look back to COVID? Right? It's like, how much of it was taken from us? Where did it get distributed? And where did it end up when it all shook out? And so Pluto's about power, Neptune's about dreams. They both have an incredible impact on the world, but especially when Saturn's involved. Like, you just expect big events, like 9/11 was when Saturn and Pluto were opposite one another. So like, you look throughout history and you can see it. Like, it's always outer planets with Saturn that have like really profound effect on the world. So we're in it.
We're in it. Yeah. Just speaking of power and Pluto, Saturn with COVID, I mean, I think a lot of Bitcoiners were born in that era trying to take power back, right? I think that's when I definitely went deep down the rabbit hole and devoted so much of my mental energy to learning Bitcoin, understanding it, and making sure that I was able to have some sovereignty over myself and my wealth, because I saw it being stolen from me with all this money that they were printing and handing out willy-nilly. And so it gives you the opportunity to try to step up, right? And react to these cosmic events that are happening. And I want to talk about AI with you, because I'm sure that it's in the charts, right? And how do you see it interacting with Bitcoin on a chart level, and then also just from your overall macro take?
The agents are going to have to start exchanging wealth in a lightning fast manner. And I'm sure that can happen on traditional rails or whatever might be created, but it's like a perfect currency. Satoshi's on something like Lightning, right? Where like it's just micropayments, and just like that world functions differently. Yeah, I mean, aside from like that correlation, I mean, it's just interesting that they're happening side by side. Like, we're definitely moving into a different world that's really hard to kind of understand. Like, for example, the debate around like, are we going to experience catastrophic job loss or not? Right. I know for me, like, I don't know if you remember, because it was around the time when we last talked, but like, I did this. Well, I have a tradition of doing April Fool's jokes in the form of like long posts where like I write about something as if it's like the biggest thing in the world, and like I get pride out of how gullible people are that are into astrology, including my colleagues. Like, my colleagues, like, astrologers usually fall for my things too, which I don't know, I love it. But I did a whole podcast in 2018 with a soundboard and all these different voices with a friend of mine who's an improv comic. We had a fun time of it. And it was basically me unveiling the AI astrologer I had built. And it had taken 7 years. We were incubating it in Silicon Valley. And even one of the guys that was working on it was a part of the whole podcast. And we were just, talking about the whole process to get Zoma, which was its name, to production. And we also gave a sample of what it's like to get a reading from it. Like, it's only a 30-minute reading of this AI astrologer. And, a young Boulder girl, which my friend played in the podcast. Anyways, it was a gag. It was hilarious. And so many people hated me for it because they believed it. Right. And part of what if I'm remembering correctly, part of what we were talking about was just like, this is inevitable. And, when it comes to like giving readings and teaching astrology or anything like in similar fields, like, it's definitely one of the first occupations that's going to get hit hard by this, because it's just information. Well, especially around learning, right? Like, I mean, if you're in the process of just wanting to learn astrology, like, I mean, depending on the AI you're using, I mean, some of them are throttled around certain things like chat and Claude and whatnot. But like, I mean, you can train these models, like the open weight models that you're running on your own computer, or even with the ones that still are kind of, curated, I guess you could say. Like I've basically trained. I've created Zoma already.
Wow.
Like I've done it with Obsidian and MCP, and like AI is completely linked into all of my notes, all of my books, all of my classes, all of my Substacks, all of my podcasts, everything I've ever done. And so when I engage with it, it's insane. Like how fast and how deep I can do research, Rob, just in engaging with my information with AI. Like, I mean, it's bonkers. Now, how this relates to Bitcoin, like, I don't know. I kind of lean into the fact that, like, even if it's a 5%, God forbid, 10% hit on the jobs market in the coming 5 to 10 years, that's going to be catastrophic. Let alone 50%. But like my feeling was like, yeah, like it's going to be like, at least in my field, like a 50% thing. And I'm feeling that. It's real. It's very real. And so we live in an inflationary world. I don't believe the CPI numbers ever. Everything is insane on that front. And so it's like, how do you want to store your time and energy? What is the best bet to protect you into this world that we're moving into? And of course, it's the scarcest and most secure thing there is. And so that's why it's a life raft, because like if things really do start to spiral out and we move into a recession, God forbid a depression, like will Bitcoin perform? God, we'll see. But like at least, and here's a big point too. There's a lot of quantum FUD. Why doesn't anybody talk about the fact that if quantum gets to the point that it's able to break Bitcoin, that everything else is already broken?
Yeah.
Why doesn't everyone ever talk about that, man? Like if it is able to break Bitcoin, every brokerage account and every bank, everything has already been hacked into. Right? And I'm
I
no
will
genius
my
here, but I think that's true.
The one answer to that is that as a decentralized system, it takes a whole lot more to upgrade and change Bitcoin than it does for Bank of America to change the encryption on their bank accounts. So yes,
Yeah.
bank accounts could be easily broken, but in terms of quantum proof addresses and everybody migrating their coins from the addresses that are now to the new ones, that would take
Yeah.
months, literally, for all the coins to move over. So that
Yeah.
is like the one thing, but I completely agree with you that everything else would be screwed too. But Bitcoin would take more time to sort of move on over to a new system rather than if it was a centralized one like a bank.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, all it takes, like, as far as I understand, I mean, like, look, like, it's complicated, but, just like one of the good practices is to never use the same address twice. Right.
Yep.
And so, like, if it was just like a mandatory function whenever you're like sending sats from one address to the other, that like, that's just mandated. It's not an option. Like, you
Yeah.
have to do that. Um, that's one simple way to protect a lot of people's Bitcoin. Um, and I mean, this is way out of my wheelhouse. Like, I don't understand quantum, and I don't understand how to create quantum resistant addresses either. Um, but at the moment, I'm not like too terribly concerned about it. Like I'm more concerned about Saylor and Trump coin than I am quantum at this
Yeah.
moment in 2026. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And I mean, it's been such an interesting time to just look at the market and the community. There's been a lot of boredom, apathy, and infighting too. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's sort of a Bitcoin civil war going on right now about JPEGs on
The
blockchain.
ordinals. Yeah.
Yeah. Arbitrary data, and the attempts to try to stop it. There is a temporary soft fork coming up to mandatory signaling starts on August 8th. I don't know. I think there's an eclipse actually on August 12th.
Close.
So those might
Yep.
be associated with each other. But it's been, I think it's been a trying time for Bitcoiners. So in closing here, let's look forward. What do we have in store for Bitcoin, for planet Earth in general, if we look cosmologically and into the stars?
Look, I think, like, again, you asked a question about the 4-year cycle. Like, it's still rotating. It still seems to be a thing. But I do, based on both the astrology and my intuition a bit, think that we're about to move into a very different era here. And I think like the first symptoms of it are kind of being witnessed just with like the tech sell-off like we mentioned before, and how Bitcoin's showing relative strength, but also how it showed so much weakness during the run-up. So I think, of course, like a lot of the money is going to probably move into Bitcoin. Like if Bitcoin gets a 5% day in the coming weeks here, like a lot of that money is going to come flooding into Bitcoin again. And, it's like none of these speculative names, whether it's the space stocks or anything related to AI, it's like it's still being brutalized and Bitcoin starts going up 5-10%. Like there's going to be a big rotation. So there's that, but also just like its narrative, its value proposition is still intact. It's just that these humans exist around it. And that was my critique about, kind of being involved as much as I am in equities. Like you're always dealing with human folly and error. And I don't like having to track all of that. That's one of the things that's so elegant about Bitcoin. We don't know Satoshi. And so when you get these huge personalities like Saylor or even Jack and everyone else that's part of dramas that are occurring, like I don't really pay too much attention. I guess you kind of have to be aware. But it's not the point. You know what I mean? Like it's just like Bitcoin doesn't care and I don't care about so much of it. But I do recognize some of the threats of it, and especially at the beginning of Trump 2.0, like there was like a pretty, how do you even describe it, Rob? Despair. Like there was like this despair that I felt with the launch of Trump coin and Melania coin. And also were we like a year into the ETFs as well. I was like, oh boy, like we've entered a new era and I don't know if I like it. Like that was my feeling at the beginning of 25. I was like, oh, I don't like this. This is different. And I always knew it was a chapter and it is a chapter. And I think, like whether the Clarity Act matters too terribly much, I think it matters enough to where like it should get passed. And like, at least there is some positivity in government around Bitcoin, like we haven't really seen. But all in all, the leader, I mean, he made out with billions and rug pulled the world.
Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin
Not a good look.
definitely. No, it's not, and it definitely tarnishes Bitcoin's name, right? People associate those two
There's a
things.
big association. It's the most frustrating thing, isn't it? I hate it. Like even my friends think I'm like a crypto guy. It's like, dude, I swear if you call me a crypto guy ever again, it's like, no. And like, sorry, Bitcoiner. It's like, look, you do have to understand the difference. Like there's a difference. Not just in like what you're investing in, but also of like quality of the person.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like people that are obsessed with alts and like total degen, like I've never resonated with that. They're not my people.
No,
You know what
it's
I mean?
fiat games. It's fiat games. That's what the alts are. That's what the crypto is. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was hard. I mean, definitely the Bitcoin attracts grifters at certain points in time, and having the president go out there and sort of tarnish the Bitcoin name with these meme coins. And it's led to these roadblocks with the Clarity Act. Clarity Act doesn't have too much to do with Bitcoin, but it would be good to get the BRCA, the developer protections, passed as part of this law. And the Democrats are now dragging their feet on that as well. So who knows how it would have gone if these meme coins were not dropped by Trump. But all we can do is live in the present that we are given. And I do think
that's right.
Bitcoin's got a bright future. Bitcoin has really never been stronger in many regards. The layer twos are proliferating. Hopefully these agents are smart enough to learn that Bitcoin is the money, the best money that they should be transacting in.
That's their answer. That's their answer. I mean, did you see that? I forget who did the study, but like someone did this.
Yeah, Bitcoin
they like
Policy
asked
Institute.
it.
Yeah,
they did it. I loved it, and then I tested it. I was like, let's see if that's true. And like I played around. Who was it I talked to? I was talking to Grok. I was like I didn't get the answer exactly, but I kind of did from Grok.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's due to all the hard work of posting on Twitter and Reddit over the last decade and a half of saying that Bitcoin is the best money. And then these AIs learning from that
Yeah, and that's probably why Grok was like, yeah, because our creator, our creator owns Bitcoin in all of his companies.
that he does, taking Bitcoin to Mars. And yeah, maybe you'll do some astrology on Mars during a retrograde one day on a Elon Musk spaceship. Who knows?
Weird. You know, like for anyone that doubts astrology, just like look at Elon's chart, and it's one of the coolest, most literal examples you'll ever see of astrology in action. In that he has Mars in Aquarius on his north node. Quick translation, the way that that would read in both Western and Eastern astrology is that Mars is like the guiding light for his soul. You know, like there's this obsession about everything that that planet represents. And so it's so literal, but also just like in the way like he is and how you can't even like, I mean, I can't even fathom running all the companies that he does, having 17 children, how many kids he has. You know what I mean? Like just like that level of life is just so impossible, but it's what Mars is correlated to. It's our energy and capacity to fight and move through this world, you know? And so to be a CEO who kind of has the deserved reputation of like never bet against Elon, that's Mars. But literally, like we're going to Mars.
We're going to Mars. No,
We're
but I
going
love
to
that.
Mars.
And I think you're so talented at being able to take these charts and astrological aspects and translate them into real life examples. So if anybody wants to hear more of your podcasts, read more of your writings, and learn from you, where should they go?
Yeah, bud. Podcast is called Constellating Cosmos. You can find it wherever podcasts are at. A lot of the recent ones over the past couple of years have been financial astrology shows. And so if you're interested, they are there. I've taught many classes on the subject. There's a whole series on my website, which is adam-sommer.com. And yeah, I do one-on-one work helping people to understand how to use this information to invest, to trade, even basic Bitcoin stuff, you know, which was popular back in the day, but with where we're at, people don't seem interested. But, you know, just like simple things, how to self-custody, how to even buy Bitcoin. What do I do? And so, yeah, I'm just a helper.
An educator. One of the best.
Educator.
No, I appreciate you and everything you do. Let's not wait another decade to catch up again.
A decade, my friend. That's crazy.
Yeah,
It's been a decade.
All right, man.
Yeah, that's not.
Cheers.
Brilliant. See you.
Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with a friend, hit that like button, leave a comment, tell us what your favorite part of it was, and subscribe and turn on notifications so you are kept up to date whenever we drop a new episode. If you want to dive deeper, be sure to check out the episode we just put out with Michael Sullivan and Adrian Morris. We talk about sentiment analysis of the Bitcoin space. These guys analyze the Bitcoin community from two different lenses, one financial, one from the words they put on Twitter, but they've come up with some really interesting findings, and I think you'll want to find out more. I'll see you over there.